Hey, and welcome to Think Like a Hacker, episode 25. We are a quarter century old now. Well, maybe 25 weeks old. Actually, it says in 25 weeks because we do 2 episodes per week now. One news episode. And
episode 10, after episode 10, we started doing that.
Yeah, but 25 episodes along, we're doing pretty good. We're still at WordCamp EU in Berlin. I think this will be our last broadcast or recording at WordCamp EU, and it's been absolutely amazing. So get ready for an awesome show. Hey everyone, so once again we're at WordCamp EU in Berlin, and this will be the last recording that we do here. Kathy, it's been a pretty amazing WordCamp EU, right?
It's been really amazing. They sold over 3,000 tickets, and
and just under 3,000 people actually showed up.
Right, and that's double what WordCamp US was last year, I believe. So it was a huge event.
Yeah, it's the biggest WordCamp in the world.
Yeah. It was amazing, and people from all over the place, all over Europe. So many different languages that were being spoken, but all of the talks were in English, and so English was sort of the main. So it was easy for me since.
Yeah, likewise. My German and French and Spanish are not that great, so it was great. But so that makes it a very diverse WordCamp, which is kind of nice. Lots of folks from many different countries and so on. And I mean, from my side, I spend most of the time networking, and it's funny, I was chatting with Chris Teitzel yesterday, who I interviewed and had lunch with, and Chris runs Locker.io, which is a fairly sophisticated security product, so we do a great interview with him, which you'll see in the coming weeks. But Chris was saying that most of his time here is just networking, and it's been the same with me. I actually caught up with Tony Perez for the first time in, I think it's like 4 years. Wow. So it's really nice connecting with him. So Tony, if you're watching this, hey, great catching up with you. Who else? David Jardin, the head of security for Joomla. I had a great conversation with him. Really nice to see him. And some of the talks, I guess I went to Matt's talk, which was pretty good. Yeah. And you mentioned Mariki's talk was great from Yoast.
Yeah, that was excellent. They talked about how to develop content, kind of thinking about your audience and making things simple and easy to chunk down lots of information into easy digestible bites, and they're doing a lot of great work over at Yoast, and I really had a great time talking to everybody at their booth. So it was fun.
Their booths.
Their booths,
they had
right.
Yoast Academy, and they had Yoast, I guess, the SEO product. I assume that was the other booth. Was the SEO product?
The SEO product, and then the Yoast Academy. Okay. They're really diving deep into education.
Yeah. And I briefly said hi to Mariki. She was actually sitting at a table over there, and very busy. She's the CEO of Yoast these days?
Yeah, CEO. And I had a great conversation with Michael, who is their COO, about just sort of the philosophy of how they run their business. And I really felt like the culture at Yoast is very similar to what we have at Defiant. So it was really fun to just kind of compare notes on how we think about serving the internet community and the WordPress community. So it was cool.
Yeah. And then that after party.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my goodness. That was by far the best WordCamp after party I've ever been to by a significant margin. They raised the bar for every WordCamp party ever.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it. So it was 80s themed. It was in the venue, and they had a show, and it was Tina Turner, just sort of Tina Turner impersonator, Joe Cocker. Who else was it? Do you remember?
Madonna,
right.
I feel like I've missed my calling, that I should move. If I ever leave WordPress, I'm moving to Berlin and I'm going to become a Madonna impersonator, because that was so much fun.
Yeah, and what was weird is when I walked in, I thought it was like lip syncing, but they were actually singing.
They were singing.
And the dancing was incredible. I mean, it actually looked like a Cirque du Soleil level production.
Yes.
It was absolutely brilliant. And so you've got like all these WordCampers standing in this kind of crowd, rocking out to this, and then they put a DJ on, and everyone started dancing, and by that time, everyone's warmed up, and of course it was 80s themed, so everyone's wearing their 80s outfit. In fact, what we should do is, so one of the things we did is we invited Jem Turner to join us in Berlin for WordCamp EU. Jem goes by Jem Jabella on Twitter, and she did along with us, she broke the PipDig story, and I did an amazing interview with Jem, which is actually coming up pretty soon. But so Jem and her partner Gaz put on these awesome suits. Gaz's suit was like a test pattern, like a 1980s test pattern. and I was wearing some ridiculously, but we've got this photo, so maybe we'll use that photo as the theme photo for the podcast.
Let's do
that
it.
Could be
Yeah.
I'll have to get Jem's permission, but that could be really fun. But the
Yeah.
outfits were incredible.
Yeah.
Everyone went all out, so that was definitely the highlight of the WordCamp for me. I mean, there was a lot of great conversations, but that was one heck of a party.
It was a lot of fun. It was great. So thanks to the organizers who put this whole thing together. So many volunteers. There were like 80 organizers and I think 200 volunteers. So when they brought everybody up on stage in these pink shirts, it was just like a mass of people. It took a lot to put this event on, and their expertise and their attention to it really showed.
Yeah. So from us, and we were just attendees this year. We weren't sponsors. We basically came here to check out WordCamp EU. We've never been before, so we came to check it out, and we'll probably sponsor next year. Just wanted to see, what happens and what the scale is and what the sponsors generally do. But from the WordFence team, thank you so much to the organizers, the volunteers, the other sponsors that were there this year, and so on. Thank you very much. It was
next
amazing.
year's Portugal.
Right, Porto.
Portugal.
In Portugal. Yeah. So that's going to be pretty epic.
Yeah,
but,
another language to learn. That'll
right?
be fun.
Yeah. Você não fala português? No?
Ich nicht verstehe.
All right.
Just figured out, got my German back, so.
I have to dredge up my Brazilian Portuguese. Okay, diving into the news and just stop embarrassing ourselves here and actually report on the things that we do know about. I guess top story this week is a free proxy service that was found running on top of 2,600 hacked WordPress sites. So that was reported by Cattle & Company on June 21st, and our date of reporting here is June 23rd. And it's free-socks.in, a commercial and free proxy server that's running on hacked WordPress sites. Almost half of the hacked sites are located in the US. The security researcher that broke the story was from NetLab, which is a subsidiary of a Chinese cybersecurity company, Qihu360. The sites were hacked and infected with a web shell backdoor and malware called Linux, and I'm going to probably mispronounce this, but Linux.ngo web malware, which acted as the proxy agent. The command and control servers had a bit of a unique structure. There was a stage 1 CNC servers that were used to manage all the infected sites, and stage 2 servers worked as back-connect proxies between the free-socks.in website and the infected sites. And just to, as a reminder to our less technical audience, or if you don't work in cybersecurity every day, when you have a botnet of a bunch of hacked machines that you're controlling, you control that from a central machine generally, and that's called a CNC server or command and control server. And so when researchers go in and explore botnets, they will try to figure out where the CNC servers are, because it generally indicates, tells you a bit more about who the threat actor is behind the botnet. So this particular botnet, which is acting as proxies for this commercial proxy service, had sort of two separate CNC infrastructures, and the Linux NGO web malware is actually a Linux port of some Windows malware, which is win32.ngo web, and that was spotted for the first time in April 2018 by Checkpoint researchers. So I guess they ported that to Linux, and we're using it to run the proxy service that they were selling, which is kind of hilarious.
Yeah.
And the researchers are sharing their infected server IP addresses with other security firms and law enforcement, and our threat intel team has reached out to them. So if we discover anything interesting there, we'll definitely report on it. But it's pretty crazy, huh, Kathy?
Yeah, it really is. It's interesting. I think we're going to try to see what we can find out, and see if we're also investigating to see if any of our threat intelligence has seen this in the wild yet. So 2,600 sites is, when you think about the whole entire ecosystem of WordPress, isn't a large number necessarily. So still investigating on that.
Yeah, so we'll report if we got anything there. But in other news, so this is I don't love this story, but we'll get to that. But the US allegedly, reportedly hit Iranian targets in a cyber attack. This has been reported by Yahoo. Actually broke the story, which was surprising to me because I don't think we break a whole ton of news. at least on the cybersecurity beat. But Yahoo, Associated Press, New York Times, Washington Post, The Verge, they're all reporting on this. And I think the story broke in the last 48 hours. Apparently there was a cyber attack that we launched on Iran. It was approved by President Donald Trump. It was the same day that Trump called off the airstrikes against Iranian targets. The target of the attacks was an intelligence group that either has ties to or is part of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, depending on which report you read. The Associated Press is saying that the attack disabled Iranian computer systems that controlled its rocket and missile launchers. The attack was launched by US Cyber Command, and the Times is reporting that they'd been planning this for several weeks, and it was meant as a response to both the attacks on oil tankers that recently happened in the Gulf, as well as the recent downing of a US drone aircraft. This is not the first time the US has been involved in a cyber attack against Iranian assets. Of course, there was the Stuxnet worm that supposedly we developed along with Israel, and then there was a plan that a documentary called 0 Days reported on back in 2016 called Nitrozeus, and the sources in that documentary said that Nitrozeus had really infiltrated the Iranian infrastructure and had a whole bunch of ways to kind of go after Iran. I must say, I see Nitrozeus come up from time to time, and it is there's one source for that, and that is 0 Days. So I don't put a whole bunch of credence in that, but yeah, what I don't love about this report is who broke the story was Yahoo News, and the first paragraph of Yahoo's article is basically the story, which is the US allegedly attacked Iran in a cyber attack, and then some other news outlets added a little bit of data, like what the targets were and so on. But this just seems it doesn't check all the boxes for me, and the reason why is because from a strategic perspective, the cyberspace as a battle space, just as a reminder, in 2016 NATO recognized cyberspace as a fifth battle domain, along with land, air, sea, and space. And the laws of physics, let's say, in cyberspace are a little bit different. So in the physical domain, if you throw a Hellfire missile at someone or a target, the missile explodes, destroys the target, and you're not handing over that technology to your adversary. Cyberspace is a little bit different because if you burn a 0 day by hacking something, you are also in a way handing that technology to your adversary, because if they have good logging, what they can do is see the payload that arrived as it crosses the wire, and they also know what software or hardware was targeted in the attack. So even if they aren't able to capture a payload, that paints a giant bullseye on the target and lets them know that they should research it, and inevitably they'll probably find the 0 day that was exploited. And so, in a case like this, where the US goes after a target in Iran, or it sounds like 2 targets, they run the risk of actually handing the exploit to their intended target. Not only that, but you lose the ability to attack that target by the same means. And that's another thing that makes cyberspace a little bit different to the other 4 battle domains, is that you throw a Hellfire missile at something, you could throw another Hellfire missile at the same thing later on if you want to. In the case of cyberspace, you gain the ability to attack a particular cyber target, but once you've done that, that target's going to be hardened, or an air gap's going to be put in place, and you lose the ability to attack that thing in future. And what confuses me about this story is that I don't know that it makes strategic sense for the US to potentially burn 0 days in the cyber attack and lose the ability to attack Iranian missile defense systems or missile systems in this attack, because we're not quite at war with Iran yet. And you might say we're in a low-level cyber war with them, but that just surprised me, and it seems a little bit odd. So the other thing is that this story was it is being reported through leaks as sources, and sometimes leaks are strategic in nature; they're intentional leaks. So I don't really know what happened there. And you and I, Kathy, were chatting earlier about the fog of war, and historically how 20 years later the truth comes out on what actually happened. So I feel like there's the full story is not being told here. There's just a little bit of data and a lot of other stuff around this. So with the Yahoo article, for example, the first paragraph reported what actually happened, and the rest of it was a giant history lesson in how the US has been engaging in the cyber domain with Iran. So there's just not much data there.
Right. It almost seems like these articles are being used by unnamed officials, and that the articles themselves are sort of like a war of words.
Yeah, there's a strategic intent there. They want to create an effect through perhaps leaks and the publication of articles, but we're speculating. To be absolutely clear, we are in the land of speculation now.
It's just all the pieces aren't lining up with what we would normally see in a cyber attack kind of investigation when our threat intel team is doing this.
Yeah. And data is scant, right? Yeah. So, like I said, Nitro Zeus, which is continually cited in articles like this. There's a single source for that, and it is a documentary called 0 Days back in 2016, and that has an unnamed source as the person that mentioned that. So this just feels a little flimsy to me, but anyway.
It's in the news.
That happened.
Everybody's talking about it.
Everyone's talking about it, so I guess we'll mention it, but with some caveats there. But Kathy, interesting story with NASA's JPL.
Yes, this we have some data on.
This we have some data.
Yeah. So, and it's been written by a number of different sources. Threat Post had a great post about this on June 19th. So apparently a Raspberry Pi, which is a very cheap computer. It's a computer, but it's very small and it's very cheap, and had been installed on the network at JPL. This happened in April of 2018. It wasn't installed by a hacker, but it was utilized by a hacker, and it was installed, it was not authorized, it was not supposed to be installed on that network. It was compromised, and it was being utilized for about 10 months, and apparently 23 files had been taken from this entry vector. Auditors found that JPL's network hadn't been limited to just the systems and applications that they were approved to access, and it allowed this attacker to gain unauthorized access to JPL's mission network. System administrators did not properly track devices that were being placed on this network, and that's how this Raspberry Pi kind of flew under the radar. And two of these files that were taken, according to this auditor, contained information on international traffic and arms regulations, which controls the transfer of military and space-related technology related to the Mars Science Laboratory mission. This was reported by Digital Trends. Jensen Space Center actually isolated themselves from this network once it was detected, because it could affect some of their mission control systems and human space flight missions, which would be very dangerous. Catalin Kimpanu from ZDNet had reported that NASA had described this as an advanced persistent threat, which is generally describing nation-state actors, and they just kind of took JPL to task, saying that, you guys, there's some basic standards in internet security and securing your networks, and you aren't following them. And so it was a rather scathing report on JPL, but it really does highlight how important network security and just generally accepted
network
practices.
hygiene, maybe?
Hygiene, right? Yeah. That there's certain things that you're supposed to do in a network, and certain policies and procedures that any network sysadmin should have, certain training that any network sysadmin should have, and that wasn't being done here. And it's definitely affecting NASA. And so we can take a look at this story and definitely say that, don't do what they do.
Yeah.
Right? It's a lot of lessons there.
And I think one of the lessons, so again, the theme of our podcast is think like a hacker. And so if you're thinking like the adversary, it's really nice if the staff in a facility are connecting random devices to the network that might have a Wi-Fi interface that you can kind of get in on, fly in on, and then connect to the larger network and pivot among systems. So if you are working in a team, don't connect random devices to the network. And if you're a sysadmin, I think it's a combination of policy as well as training. Get folks to realize the dangers of connecting just whatever they want to the network, and that kind of jeopardizes the entire mission in this case, or several missions.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, definitely.
Gnarly story from the NASA folks.
Yeah.
But moving on, so there's a security incident with WeTransfer, and they sent files to the wrong people. And from what I gathered in the story, so this is being reported on June 21st by Lawrence Abrams on Bleeping Computer. The incident took place between June 16th and 17th, and there's emails that WeTransfer send out that give you access to files. And those emails were sent to the wrong people, which means that the wrong people got access to files. And WeTransfer is a kind of cloud storage service, and so they basically gave the wrong people access to files that belong to folks that use WeTransfer. I think so the details are still emerging, but I think the lesson here is that QA is really important. This isn't actually a breach, a data breach where a threat actor went in and stole data. This is more of a software error, it sounds like.
Yes.
But I think that what this really highlights is the security issues that can be introduced when you don't have rock-solid QA in place for a team that is developing software that controls access to systems.
Right. And for end users to consider the security of, if you're trying to send a file to someone and it's a large file and you can't just attach an email or whatever, to really consider the types of services that cloud services that you're using when you want to send those kinds of files, that you're basically, don't send sensitive information via these methods.
And the cloud is just someone else's computer?
It really is. It's just someone else's computer. And
in this case, it's WeTransfer's computer. They're the ones who control access. Their software controls access, and their dev team are human.
As we all are.
Yeah, as we all
but
are.
It's it's who you're going to trust and what are you going to trust them with.
And I think the trick is to put controls in place. And I think that in this case, one can actually look at the software QA team as a security control.
Definitely.
So yeah, but Oregon sounds like they're hurting a little bit.
Yeah, somebody is a little 9 people actually clicked phishing links. And
9 people.
9 people.
Oh.
That phishing attacks, this was reported by ZDNet, phishing attacks had let hackers into the Oregon Department of Human Services employee accounts. This news release was from the Oregon DHS, and this event happened, it started on January 8th of 2019, and 9 DHS employees were fooled by phishing emails. And it took them 20 days to secure those accounts. They noticed that their email accounts were not working properly, and this exposed over 645,000 Oregonians who signed up for benefits with DHS. And it's unclear if the hackers actually accessed and downloaded any of the user data, but the data was exposed.
Yeah, so that's a bit of a painful one.
Yeah.
I got to tell you, so the 9 folks that clicked on that email, that actually feels like what you would see if there's a red team exercise on an organization for the very first time. And you remember, I think it was a week ago, we were covering the news and we were talking about the importance of running these exercises on an organization.
Yeah.
And this just feels like a company that didn't have adequate training and that hadn't been running any kind of red team exercises or anything.
Yeah.
Someone went in and just cleaned up. First try.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And it's really important to do training exercises with employees, no matter their technical level. If they have an email account, they need to be trained in how to recognize phishing attacks. And apparently some folks aren't.
Yeah. So wow. All right, well, in other news, and I'm going to butcher this organization's name, but I'm going to make an assumption of how to pronounce it. So Desjardins, the Desjardins Group, had a data leak that exposed info of 2.9 million members. And so what happened here is that the sensitive personal information of roughly 2.9 million Desjardins Group members was exposed. It was first and last name, date of birth, social insurance number. So this is a Canadian organization. So I assume the social insurance number is the equivalent of a social security number. Address, phone number, email address, details of banking habits, and Desjardins product usage was all exposed. The business members, the leaked data there included business name, business address, business phone number, owner's name, names of users on the Access d'Affaires account, and so on. This was not actually caused by a cyber attack. An employee disclosed it to people outside of the organization without authorization. So again, it's one of these things where it just highlights employee training.
Yes.
And Yeah, so Desjardins became aware of the data leak on June 14th when the Laval police provided Desjardins with information confirming that the personal info of more than 2.9 million members had been disclosed to individuals outside the organization. This group is the largest association of credit unions in North America. Again, they're Canadian, but they're massive, and the largest cooperative financial group in Canada. So yeah, it's a
Train your employees.
train your employees, do your red team exercises, practice your cybersecurity hygiene.
I know that one of Mikey's talks is about the weakest link is the human factor in security and social engineering and things like that. So it's really important that, you know, another level or layer of security is your people.
Yeah, for sure. And just as a reminder, Mikey Veenstra is one of our researchers in the WordFence Threat Intelligence team, and he does quite a few blog posts, collaborates with the rest of the team, and publishes some pretty amazing research.
Yes.
So definitely check that out on our blog. But do you remember when we reported on this LabCorp and Quest story, and I was ranting about how there's no accountability? Well, it sounds like there's accountability in this one.
Yeah, yes.
So.
Sad noise, insert sad noise here. Well, this is reported by Krebs on Security and the collections firm AMCA, which is a collection agency for a number of medical testing facilities, Quest Diagnostics, LabCorp. 20 million Americans were affected by this collection agency that had a breach. And the parent company of AMCA is Retrieval Masters Creditors Bureau. And they said they learned of this breach after a significant number of credit cards that people used to pay their outstanding medical bills through this collection agencies had ended up with fraud charges. So credit card companies had sort of patterned this together. And that's how they learned about it. And Bloomberg is now reporting that because of this, this has caused a cascade of events which has incurred enormous expenses that were beyond the ability of Retrieval Masters to recover from. So they are now declaring bankruptcy. They're facing 3 class action lawsuits in both New York and California. And LabCorp, Quest, and 2 other companies stopped sending their business to AMCA because of this. So this is what happens when security issues.
Yeah,
there is accountability.
Yeah, I think this really highlights the potential consequences of a breach. And so AMCA's parent organization, Retrieval Masters Creditors Bureau, is now declaring bankruptcy because they were breached. So I guess when you kind of do the arithmetic on whether you want to invest in cybersecurity, consider the consequences. I think there's an interesting point at the end of Krebs' article, or Brian Krebs, I should say, who does amazing work. He said that this might be a preemptive strike from Retrieval Masters to protect themselves by declaring bankruptcy because they've got these class action lawsuits.
Yeah.
So that might be a strategic move, and they might be able to get out of certain obligations perhaps and then emerge from bankruptcy, who knows. But pretty severe consequences there. Yeah, so that's it for this week's news from Berlin and WordCamp EU. Kathy, I guess we got a review on Apple Podcasts, which is kind of cool. You wanna read that?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so the person's username is Sabern Jax, and they left us a 5-star review on June 22nd, and they said, just enough geek, just enough intrigue, just enough business. So I guess we're doing just enough, right? I've been listening since episode 1. Thank you for listening, and have been really enjoying it. They are really hitting their stride, especially after episode 21 when Mark declared the podcast of legal drinking age. I guess that's when you start hitting your stride, hey? Technical discussion of risks and breaches, storied discussion of real impacts to real people and real business, practical discussion of actions to take and what to watch for, real conversations with experts in the field and real business owners. We're keeping it real and just enough of everything. So thank you very much for the review. If you leave a review for us on Apple Podcasts, we may read your review as well. Thanks for listening.
Yeah, and Kathy, from me to you, my compliments on the podcast today. I know how hard you partied last night and how late you were up, and I
had so much
it's quite impressive, actually.
You know what hurts the worst is my feet, because I was like dancing
Yeah.
and having a great time. And
Yeah.
so many new friends and so many old friends that we see at many WordCamps, and we just had a great time.
Yeah, that was awesome. All right, well, if you're watching on YouTube, like and subscribe. And if you are on Apple Podcasts, leave us a review and help spread the word for the podcast. Thanks for watching from WordCamp EU and Berlin. This will be our last podcast from here. So thanks very much for joining us. The next one will be from back in the States, or stateside as they say. And have a wonderful week, everyone. Bye.